Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. A couple of days ago, we did a video comparing Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon, to Avowed. It seemed like many of you really appreciated that video. A few of you had some very strong reactions to some of my thoughts, but on the whole, it feels like a lot of you are still trying to figure out whether or not Tainted Grail is a good game for you to purchase. So I thought I'd do another video to try to help you figure out what are some of the pros and cons of that particular game. Now, keep in mind, in addition to the comparison video, I did do a full review on Tainted Grail. So if you haven't checked that out yet and you wanted some more information about the game, there will be a link for that down below. I also put out a build for the summoner setup that I used throughout my entire playthrough. So check out that video as well if you're trying to figure out what build might be best for you. With all that being said, what I want to do in this video is look at some of the negative reviews for Tainted Grail on Steam. There are definitely some people who purchased the game and were dissatisfied with their purchase. And I think going through some of those reviews and seeing some of their issues with the title might help some of you figure out whether or not it's the right game for you. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, let's go ahead and look at the reviews. Now, for each one, I'm going ahead and just clip out the content. I'm not going to show you all the name of who's associated with the review. This is not about directing hate towards any individuals. I love Tainted Grail. I know a lot of you love Tainted Grail. Other people don't. That's okay. That's their right. So let's not do the dummy, y'all. No hate, no harassment. Let's just look at the video and assess these reviews for ourselves and have a good time. All right, let's do it. First review. I've never written a game review before now, but I just had to for this game because it seems to me, judging by other knee-jerk reaction reviews I see, which have only 3 to 15 hours of playtime, I have much more, obviously, that many people suspect that the rest of the game is just as great after those first dozen or so hours. Spoilers, you're wrong. Act 1, whether it's intended to be or not, it's a bait and switch. I don't agree, but I think this criticism does have some degree of merit. Let's go ahead and move forward. The quality falls off a hill once you head into Act 2. And while Act 2 does, by and large, maintain a good portion of what makes Act 1 good character interactions, fun combat, interesting story, it starts to show blemishes. And I mean major blemishes. Major characters don't have voice acting. Arthur, your cerebral companion like Johnny Silverhand of Cyberpunk 2077, just suddenly stops talking to you for the majority of the act, even after major story beats that he would certainly comment on happen with no actual lore reasoning behind it. Turns out it's bugged. You fall through the map all the time and have to use the unstuck option in the menu, and many NPCs stop giving you dialogue mid-conversation. It's very interesting to see this reviewer talk about things being major issues in the game that I only experienced sparingly. I only fell through the map once, and I only got stuck once. So I only used that unstuck button in the main menu. That only happened once as well. I did experience characters not having the proper voice acting multiple times, but the vast majority of it was in Act 3. Acts 1 and 2 were, for the most part, very smooth for me. And most of what I'm seeing from other players at least appears to be reporting the same thing, that a lot of the issues that you run into are in Act 3, and already they started patching a lot of that out. Now, if any of you disagree, definitely leave comments down below. Let me know if you've been having a different experience. But again, from the playthrough that I had and what I've heard from other people, I would say that this is not really par for the course and not what you should expect from an experience with Tainted Grail. Now, speaking of Act 3, he does get into that, so let's talk about it. But oh boy, does Act 3 maintain the bugs going forward. Act 2 had bad spots to be sure, but Act 3, it's downright unplayable. Let me stop right there. That's not true. That's not true. And that's coming from someone who I play games for a living, right? Like I've had this channel for 4 years. I've absolutely played some games where I'm like, all right, what I'm experiencing right now is unplayable. At no point was Tainted Grail on that level. In fact, I'm pretty sure I mentioned in my review that I believe it's significantly more stable than any Elder Scrolls game that I've experienced. Way more stable than Skyrim was a release, way more stable than Oblivion was a release. And I never played Morrowind, but from everything that I've heard, that game had a very rocky launch as well. Tainted Grail is nowhere near on that level. It definitely has bugs, definitely has issues. It definitely needs to be polished more, right? But it was not a chore from a bug standpoint to get through the game at all. It's not unplayable. Moving on, main quest givers refuse to leave their houses, so you're unable to talk with them. Merchants stay in their houses, and the merchants who claim they sell weapons and armor are only selling arrows. Conclusion, act spanning faction quest lines rewarding you with a rock and mini quests not rewarding you at all like they should. Like you literally are given nothing when the NPC says they do give you something. To top it all off, you don't even get to go to Camelot, despite the game telling you constantly through some of the NPCs you meet that they'll see you there. Now, let me split up those two complaints. On the one hand, he says quests don't give what they should. I don't feel comfortable saying that that's not true because I didn't watch like a hawk every time I submitted a quest to see what new item was given to me. I'm much more the type of person, I do quests back to back to back, and then I go to my camp, and then I assess everything that's in my inventory and deal with it from there. So it's very possible that on an individual basis, maybe I turned in a quest and someone said, hey, I've given you something special, and I didn't bother to check. And then by the time I got back to my camp, I didn't realize that, oh, this particular quest didn't reward me. So it might be possible that this is the case, but nobody's reported this to me and my channel. There's been a ton of people commenting on my channel about Tainted Grail. So I feel like this is the kind of thing I would have heard about. So I don't feel like it's happening. But again, this is one of those situations. If this happened to you, let me know down in the comments so that other people seeing this who are trying to make a decision about whether or not they want to purchase the game can decide based on that information. Now, the other part of his criticism is about you never going to Camelot. Pretty sure I talked about this in my review. No, I didn't say that it was a problem that you never go to Camelot. I did say it was a problem that there's not enough Knights of the Round Table content in the game. 100% totally agree that the fact we never go to Camelot feels very, very off. It absolutely feels like Camelot should be one of the main areas in the game. Now, Camelot not being there, do I feel deceived? Do I feel like they pulled a bait and switch? No, I don't. Tainted Grail is still a great game. It's still got 60 to 80 hours of incredible content. So I don't feel like it's a bait and switch, that it's not a 100-hour game where an extra 20 hours was spent running around in Camelot, right? But I do understand the criticism of people who feel like, based on everything going on, that part really should have been in there. And again, in my review, I mentioned there's not enough content that's specifically anchored in Arthurian mythology as far as his Knights of the Round Table and by extension, Camelot. So hopefully that's a part of the game that's going to be fleshed out more through DLC. All right, the last part of the review, it sucks that I have to write all of this because the game has the potential to be as great as some people are preemptively making it out to be. I highly implore anyone with sense to wait 6 months to a year to play this game, as in its current state, it's still in early access just without the name. And in case anyone doesn't want to trust my review, hop on over to the Officials Games Discord and have a gander at the feedback and bugs channel. Come to your own conclusions. I'm not telling you what to think. I actually haven't looked at the feedback or bug section for the Tainted Grail Discord. So by all means, check that out for yourself. Maybe there is interesting information there, but my personal perspective, and I'm sure the perspective of a lot of people who are going to comment on this video, is that the game doesn't come off as if it's still in early access. It comes off as a full game, a pretty damn good game at that. And it's not the type of title that you have to wait 6 months to a year before you can get a product that you're going to enjoy. If you know you love open world action RPGs of a similar type to Skyrim and Oblivion, along with a dash of Souls-like content. This is absolutely the game for you, rather, right here, right now. All right, that's it for review number 1. So let's get into review number 2. Overall, the game has potential but falls short in key areas. Let's break it down. The good. The main story is compelling. Advancing the main quest consistently builds intrigue and motivation to continue. The setting is unique and has moments of genuine engagement. Exploration can be immersive with occasional moments that really draw you in. Some combat encounters are well designed, offering a good challenge and fun gameplay. I would agree with all of that. I spoke about all of that in my review. So far, so good. Now the bad. The game's ambition seems to have exceeded its execution. The skill system offers many options, but most builds boil down to basic archetypes: melee, ranged, magic. Hybrid approaches are underwhelming and lack synergy, especially between melee and magic. I don't agree with this. Now, I do feel like there's room for the game to have more spells that serve as buffs. The vast majority of your spells serve the purpose of damage, and you only get a couple of them that revolve around limiting damage or healing or things that might fit more with a melee combatant. But still, at the end of the day, melee and magic go together very, very well. You can use your sword when you're up close, and you can use your spells when enemies are further away. It absolutely can be very effective, and there are a lot of other hybrid options as well that work really, really nicely. And there's a ton of gear that revolves specifically around players who are using hybrid options. So I don't see that as a legitimate complaint. The armor weight mechanic feels more punitive than strategic. It's kind of an odd one for me because, to be honest with you, I don't feel strongly about the armor system. I don't think it really adds something in the game and is all that great. But to make if you made if you made the critique that the game would be just as good if you took that whole armor system out and that it adds an unnecessary layer of complication, that I might understand more and maybe I would agree with it. But this review makes the case that it feels more punitive than strategic, whereas I feel like the armor system adds quite a bit of strategy to your gameplay, because how much armor you're wearing can interact directly with some of the skills that you're using and how much damage that you can deal. In fact, in the summoner build I dropped, I mentioned that if you stay in just light armor, you're going to get a 20% bonus to your speed multiplier. And there's a skill option that specifically gives you more spell power in an amount that's equal to your speed multiplier, right? So it's stuff like that. It's interaction like that where I feel like it's very, very strategic, and I don't feel like it's more punitive than strategic, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily good. So I disagree with this critique, but I don't necessarily disagree with the overall critique that the armor system isn't really all that great. Next up, many side activities are repetitive fetch quests or item gathering with minimal payoff. Side quests have decent writing, but often fall into the follow the marker routine. So I actually don't disagree with this. I think a lot of the side quests, what you are supposed to do isn't all that crazy. It's a typical fetch quest type of setup. It's the quality of the writing that make the side quests more interesting for me. And for some people, that's probably not enough. For some people, they're like, look, I'm tired of the kill X person or deliver X object or pick up X object type of quest, and I don't care how intriguing the storyline around those quests actually is. I can understand that, but for me personally, I felt like the writing for these side quests was very, very strong. So the fact that a lot of them do essentially come off like fetch quests, it didn't really bother me personally. Nighttime gameplay lacks meaningful rewards and feels like an unnecessary obstacle rather than an engaging challenge. I completely disagree with that. When the game turns to night, you're going to get access to enemies you otherwise wouldn't see. All of the enemies in the world give you more XP. They also drop spider webs, which you can use to power your bonfires and allows you to do a few different things. So there's a lot of interesting aspects of fighting at night, and especially for players who prefer a greater challenge, I think there's some really, really cool features. Even more importantly, in most games, walking around at night doesn't change things nearly as much as it changes it in Tainted Grail. Like if you walk around at night in Skyrim, maybe you'll meet like a single character who's different from who you would usually see, but it doesn't change the whole landscape and it doesn't change the whole feel of the experience of what you're getting. Even the music changes in Tainted Grail when you're walking around at night. So no, I disagree. Walking at night is really, really cool. And this is coming from someone who avoids it like the plague. Story pacing is inconsistent and occasionally disjointed. I wish he went into detail about this a little bit more. I mentioned in my review, I feel like the side quests are the real star of the show. And like a lot of Elder Scrolls games, right? Like the main quest is cool, but the side quest is really the meat of the game. And the main quest kind of just pulls you through different areas. I kind of feel the same way about Tainted Grail, but I wouldn't necessarily call the main quest disjointed, even though I feel like there could have been a little bit more there. So without some more information, it's hard for me to say whether or not I agree with this. Interactions with NPCs lack depth. Characters serve more as exposition tools than meaningful presences in the world. Choices have limited impact. While some appear in summaries, most consequences are surface level, reduced to short NPC comments or minor journal updates. So this is one of the things I talked about in my comparison video, where I felt like Avowed and the choices that it allowed you in the main quest was much more impactful and had a much bigger impact on the end. And there were definitely some of you who commented and reached out to me and felt like that was wrong and felt like, no, Tainted Grail does so much more for you. I disagree, and I stand on that. I feel like this is, on some level, a legitimate feedback. I think that the characters you can meet in Tainted Grail are very interesting, and they're fun to talk to, right? But as far as feeling like you've made choices that have real serious weight and radically change either the world or the storyline, and that you're going to get a very, very different experience if you play through the game again and made a different choice, though those are few and far in between in Tainted Grail. It's not that kind of game at all. So you get to do a lot of cool and interesting things, but the variety in choices and the impact of choices is not what's really going to pull you through. All right, we've been through the good and the bad. Now let's get to the ugly. Significant technical and design issues undermine the experience. Falling through terrain, especially in Act 2, is a reoccurring issue that disrupts immersion and progression. Workarounds involving unstuck options and fast travel shouldn't be necessary. Again, I didn't experience this repeatedly, so please definitely let me know down in the comments if you feel like maybe this was an issue at launch, but the patches that have come out have fixed it, or if you feel like it's still an issue with the game right now. I'm definitely curious about this, especially since it's come up once again. Missing voiceovers for key characters and side quests is disappointing in a full release. I apologize. I think in the first review, this was brought up and I didn't completely answer it. So I did experience missing voiceovers in Act 3, a ton of them. When I was about halfway, maybe 2/3 through Act 3, Awakened Realms dropped a patch, and they said that patch was going to fix the overwhelming amount of missing voiceovers in Act 3. And I went back and talked to people who previously did not have a voice actor, and all of them now had voice acting. And so because of that, I felt like the vast majority of this issue had been been resolved. So definitely would be interested to hear from people if they feel like no, a large portion of Act 3 or maybe even the overall game. Because again, in Act 1 and 2, I never experienced that. It was only in Act 3 where I started running into people who just flat out didn't have their voiceovers. So if you feel like that's a recurring issue throughout the game, definitely let me know so that could be part of my commentary moving forward. Post Act 1, environments feel rushed and sparsely detailed. Some areas seem hastily designed with misplaced assets like trees and roadways breaking immersion. That's a fascinating take because, to be honest with you, I'm not sure if that's even something I would have noticed or thought about if I was walking along a road and all of a sudden there was a tree there. Like, with this person mentioning it, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yo, that would be terrible. That wouldn't make any sense, right? But if I was just walking along in the world, I don't know if that would have stuck out to me like that. So it's hard for me to push back on that commentary. But what I will say is, I feel differently because Act 1, even though it's obviously the most well-polished out of all the areas, and so consequently the environments are the most well-polished, everything is also very quick. It's all in and out. Every single area you get into, basically 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes max, you'll clear the whole thing and you'll be up out of there. Whereas in Act 2, it has a couple, and I think maybe even 3, really, really long form dungeons where you're going to go into different environments and areas as you get further and further in. And I thought those were done so freaking well. I was really, really impressed with the work there. So in the general landscape that you're walking around, you might be able to make the case it doesn't quite come off as consistent as Act 1. But honestly, I think the environmental work in Act 2 is superior to what you see in Act 1. Elevators are poorly implemented and feel out of place within the world design. 100% agree. I mentioned this in my review. They're specific. This is about Act 3. The elevators are in Act 3. They're terrible. It's absolutely terrible. It's very difficult as a player to understand where these elevators are and how you're supposed to utilize them. I did not like the layout of Act 3 at all. Large open spaces lack meaningful content, often feeling empty and underutilized. There are definitely some areas where I felt like there's too much just open space here. And there's too much, I'm just trying to walk and walk and walk to get to the quest or the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So I don't feel like, I wouldn't have put this in the ugly. I might have put this in the bad because I don't think it's a major, major issue with the game because it's layered with so much crazy amount of content. But there are definitely some dry spots where you're like, all right, why they have me walking so long with nothing to do? Towns and villages lose their charm after Act 1, becoming static and lifeless. Totally disagree with that. In Act 1, you only have one town that you can actually go to and talk to people. I mean, I guess it's 2 towns. You got the main hub area and then the small village. So, okay, I guess that's 2. I feel like Act 3 is the place where the towns really, really shine because you get these 4 different areas that all have people in them who all are from completely different cultures, see things in a totally different way, and they have totally different quests they need you to undertake in order to convince them to collaborate with you. And a lot of those quests are very, very interesting and peel back more layers of the lore and the world that Awakened Realms has put together. I think towns and villages shine a lot more in Act 3 than they do in Act 1. Closing thoughts. Releasing this game at full price in its current state feels premature and straight morally wrong. While it draws clear inspiration from titles like Oblivion and Skyrim, it fails to capture their strengths, instead echoing their weaker elements. The early parts of the game, particularly the prologue in Act 1, set up expectations that the rest of the game doesn't meet. Unless major improvements are made, including addressing technical issues and enriching the world with content, this is a title best picked up at a discount. The addition of paid cosmetic DLC at launch only underscores the disconnect between product quality and pricing. Before taking jabs at other studios, it's worth ensuring your own release meets the standard. I don't remember Awakened Realms taking jabs at other studios. I don't even know what that's referencing. If any of you do, please leave me a comment down below. I definitely agree there are some issues that this game has. It needs to continue to be patched to make it more stable. And there are, as I mentioned, some dry spots where I felt like there should be some content here and some things that they could flesh out through patches or DLC. But the idea that this is a game that needed 6 months or another year and they should be ashamed that they released this game and blah, 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 totally disagree with all of that. I am totally fine with the timeline in which this game is released. And I think it's a ton of fun. Obviously, a lot of people agree with me as well. All right, let's keep it going with another review. To the devs and publisher, shame on you. To get this far only to bound to the deadline when it was not ready. To the prospective customer, be aware that this product simply wasn't finished. There's enough shoestrung together if you want to put up with it, but expect problems unless you want to play a stealth archer. Why stealth archer? I never used stealth. My whole playthrough, I never used stealth. And I had a blast. And I feel like there's a lot of other people playing this game who never do anything related to stealth or archery, quite frankly, who are having a blast. Why is stealth archer the magic key to unlock a decent playthrough in this game? Moving on. This game is very well fleshed out in some areas and then very broken and lacking in other areas. Some character systems only partially work. Read below for an example, but have not yet been patched days later. And from what little information is out there about the game, most of these issues were known and pointed out by testers prior to release. Why does he say days later? Like that should be an expectation. Usually, if you're going to get a patch after the game comes out, you got to wait at least a week in order for them to pull this stuff together and release a patch addressing some things. It's not like they could just cobble something together and release it the next day. Steam doesn't even let you do that. So I feel like that's a weird call out. Again, there are areas of the game that need to be patched, but they're working on it. It's very obvious they're releasing more patches and trying to work to make the game as stable as possible. Some appear to be new. There's little to no feedback from the developers post-launch, at least not being pushed to the consumer. Hey, good question. I haven't really heard anything from the developers post-launch, but I didn't expect to because I feel like they're hard at work. But for the general consumer who has purchased Tainted Grail and is looking for more information regarding the game and contact with them, do you feel like they've been receptive, and do you feel like you're getting appropriate amount of communication essentially from the devs, or do you agree with this reviewer that it's been radio silence? Let me know. Depending on what skill point decisions you make for your character, it's a crapshoot on whether your character will be viable in the second act. There are methods to change how your character's stats and skills are distributed, but then you need to acquire all new gear for your new play style that probably doesn't match what you actually wanted to play at all in the first place. So shut up and enjoy your new second choice that everybody is landing on, because it's what actually works in the game, the stealth archer. That's not true. I played as a summoner. I did not use any archery. I did not use any stealth whatsoever. There is clearly a major difficulty curve from Act 1 to Act 2. As soon as you hit Act 2, it's like, whoa, I'm getting absolutely blown apart by these enemies. And yes, you do need to get better gear, better spells, whatever, so that whatever playstyle you have is actually going to work. But it's not a situation where you need to completely change your playstyle. It might be a pain point for a while. You might have to go through some grueling battles before you're able to find everything that you need in order to use whatever playstyle you prefer. But to try to make it seem like, well, clearly you have to be a stealth archer because that's like the magic sauce. Like, no, I got out there and some of those fights, they took quite a while and it was brutal, but I got through the game. Like, come on now, bro. Be serious. I decided to play a summoner, like me. I really should not have done that, because summoning isn't just bad, it's a flippin' trap. Your summons will sometimes attack. The all-knowing crowd of game defenders will say, oh, but you aren't targeting the baddies using the summon spell's light attack, as though their Jedi insights led them to some far deeper understandings of how to read a stat sheet for an item. But in actuality, your reading comprehension is just fine. It is simply that there is a 75% chance that 4 out of 5 of your summons are back 100 yards, picking their collective noses, and gosh, that wall of rocks is just too much effort to move 5 feet around to bother participating in the fight that you just asked them to join. The other 25%, the mob is a boss, and nothing you do will get them to attack. They will just stand there, period. Honestly, that's kind of facts. I don't completely disagree with this. Basically, what the situation is, and I mentioned this in the Summoners build that I dropped either yesterday, the day before, or whatever. If you, a lot of times during boss fights, there's either a cutscene that comes up, or you have to drop into a pit first, or something of that nature, right? Something that kind of triggers the game to let them know, hey, give this guy the really, really special enemy. And your summons will not react. If the cutscene ends, your summons won't be standing next to you. If you drop into a pit, a lot of times your summons won't follow you. What is the way around this? You have to resummon them. When that cutscene ends, the first thing you should be doing is putting all your summons right back into the field. And the game does do a very good job of, if the summons come out and there's an enemy standing right next to them, they immediately lock onto that enemy. They're not going to stand around and just do nothing usually. So you don't even have to direct them to attack that enemy. Just bringing them out right next to a foe is enough to get them to say, okay, it's time to go ahead and make it happen. This is also why I mentioned in my Summoners build video that you really don't want to use summons who have ranged attacks. They'll try to pelt the enemy from 10 freaking feet away when it's clear none of those attacks are reaching the foe. So you really want to stick with melee only summons who have to run up to the enemy in order to be able to attack them, which will ensure they always are right in the midst of the fight, taking heat off you while also dealing very, very good damage. So yes, playing a summoner requires you to consistently summon your enemies. That's not all that crazy to me. Like, yes, there are AI problems with this game, and yes, things could be better, but the idea that summoning is just completely broken in a way where it's unenjoyable, that's not true at all. I had a blast playing as a summoner. It was absolutely fantastic. Fun feature. It is so bad, any summons behind you when you engage in combat won't even bother to do anything until you literally turn your in-game camera onto their models, and only then will they do anything to engage. Yeah, they are the teenagers you hire to sweep up your front porch while you work on the rose bushes, who won't actually move those brooms unless you're ignoring the roses to pay attention to them. Sounds like a blast, right? Again, that was definitely not my experience. Now, build your character like this in a game that sets up an entire skill tree for your playstyle, get to Act 2, and realize that no level of jank will save this character. And even if it eventually gets patched, then it also appears that whatever summons you found in Act 1 are the only summons to be found in the game, meaning a whole class of play was, forgotten and or unfinished is what I would call that. What kind of review would you leave after having this experience? That's absolutely not true. I found 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 summons in Act 2 alone. I did find no summons in Act 3, but I've already received comments from people saying that they found summons in Act 3. So Tainted Grail has a system that I don't know if this actually works to its benefit, but it has a system where you have to go out and either purchase or find spells. They're not just available for you to select while you're leveling up. And this can absolutely cause a lot of people to miss critical spells that would really make their particular playstyle much more enjoyable, because some of these spells, there's only one copy of them. So if you miss it, you're just done for. And I can totally see how that might be frustrating, but to find no spells, no summoning spells in Act 2, one of the summoning spells you can get in Act 2 is just available from purchase from one of the main vendors that you have to talk to as part of the main quest. So the fact that I found no summoning spells in Act 2, that's kind of wild. All right, let's move into the next review. The game was advertised and portrayed as a dark, immersive fantasy RPG, both in trailers, screenshots, and early gameplay. However, after progressing further, particularly in the side quests, the tone and writing shifted drastically. It began to resemble modern internet humor or Marvel-style writing, which breaks immersion and doesn't align with the advertised dark fantasy tone. For anyone looking for a true dark fantasy experience, as this game was advertised, don't buy it. It leans on modern writing tropes that feel out of place, and it avoids classic dark fantasy themes likely to stay safe. It's disappointing because I was genuinely excited for this game. Just more proof that sometimes sailing the seas is the better option. Don't need a refund then. I've requested a refund as I won't be playing this any further. Unfortunately, no amount of modding can fix Reddit-style writing. I thought this review was fascinating, and I really want to hear you all's perspective on it because I disagree. I feel like Tainted Grail is a great example of a dark fantasy experience, especially in a video game format. I think a lot of the things they've done made it a really, really cool to experience the game from a dark fantasy standpoint. But I'm also not hypersensitive to modern writing, right? Like there's a lot of people who, like, if there's anything that breaks them out of that fantasy immersion, it just drives them crazy and it ruins their experience. I'm not really one of those guys. And so for some of you who I know feel that way, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on whether or not playing through Tainted Grail, you felt a lot of the writing was Marvel style and Reddit style, as was mentioned here, or if you feel like this is an unfair complaint regarding the game. Definitely leave me a comment down below. Let me know your perspective. All right, next up, buy on sale, as this game doesn't deliver on everything it promises. Thumbs up if this game was 15 to 20 bucks cheaper. That's insane. All right, let's just keep it a band. This is an 80-hour Elder Scrolls type experience with fully fleshed out skill trees, multiple fully fleshed out crafting systems, just an absolute massive amount of content, and it's being sold for 50 bucks, and your response is, well, they should have gave it to me for 30. That's crazy. That's kind of crazy to me, but let's keep going. The game is not what was advertised to the fans, and it doesn't follow through on any of the promises made in the first main act. I'm honestly so tired of devs only putting effort into the first act and then leaving the rest of the game as unpolished and lacking. This game is 3 main acts. 5 were promised previously. Look back at the dev blogs. I actually don't know anything about it, but that doesn't sound crazy to me. I agree with the criticism that it really seems like we should have went to Camelot in this game. So it's completely possible originally they planned for you to go to Camelot and had to remove some acts so they could get this game out the door. I'm in the middle of Act 3 at the moment. I'm more disappointed in the pure number of unfulfilled promises the players given in Act 1, which have little to no payoff in Acts 2 or 3. I assume this is due to development time, although I haven't seen this discussed anywhere. If they were upfront about this, I'd be a lot happier. Proof from my perspective. I'm 23 hours into the game as of this review and am in mid-Act 3. They promise 50 to 70 hours. I am in no way a completionist, but also I like to explore. I've seen the vast majority of Acts 1 and 2 and most of the third region at this point, and I'm not even at the 30-hour mark. That is just not possible. I'm just keeping it 1,000. It's not possible unless you skipped all of the dialogue, unless you just tap your way through all of the dialogue and then just play through the game. It's not possible. You got through acts 1 and 2 and saw the majority of content and you're at the 30-hour mark. All right. And I don't think it's fair for developers to provide a gameplay time that accounts for players who skip all the dialogue. And I've seen this come up in some reviews where, developers will complain and say that a content creator said the game could be completed in a certain amount of time, and it didn't at all account for the massive amount of dialogue that you're supposed to actually listen to as you're going through the game. So, and this comes from someone, when I play games on my own, I read faster than I'm listening to it. So I just speed read the subtitles and just click through. But I account for that in my review. So did it actually take me 80 hours to finish the game? No. I finished the game in a lot shorter time than that. But I don't provide a time frame based on me clicking through all of the dialogue and never listening to anything, because that's not the legitimate way of playing the game. They say at 80 hours, that's totally legit. It's a totally legit statistic. The King's Soul realm has a wall in its back center, cutting off 2 parts of the King's Soul, which were shown in early shots. This 6-bloodstream King's Soul realm is literally in all the advertising from the game, assuming these 2 cuts were for the last 2 acts. There were big promises of us eventually visiting Camelot, but you never do. I agree with all this, that there's clearly some content that they cut, but I don't feel like it's accurate to say like it's something they promised that they came up short on. Like originally they planned to do this content and then they didn't. And we still got an 80-hour game, open world across 3 acts with a ton of content, a fully fleshed out ending. It's not, I don't feel like the dev shorted us. I do feel like we should go to Camelot. That I definitely agree with that. And so I feel like they should put together a DLC package that puts Camelot in the game. Maybe Camelot was originally in the game, maybe it wasn't, whatever. I definitely feel like it should go into the game, but I don't agree that by it not being in the game, Awakened Realms has shorted the fans, and because of that, fans should not purchase the game. I don't agree at all. To get into this point more, there are so many people that say, see you in Camelot in Act 2. That's true. I wouldn't say so many people, but there are definitely a few. There's this promise at the end of Act 2 for this hunt or the Grail, which never comes up in Act 3. The game makes it clear, or at least I felt like it was clear, that you as the player are not participating in the hunt for the Grail, that you have other things to do, and that this other group is going to pursue that hunt, and maybe they'll win and maybe they won't. I didn't get the impression that I was going to go off on that quest with them. Act 1 is so polished, I agree. Act 2 feels empty, and some places just outright feel unfinished. I don't agree. It doesn't feel empty. There are dry spots, definitely, but overall, I don't feel like the world feels empty. There's a ton of content to do in Act 2. All of Act 3 feels unfinished, and so many of the interactions just feel unnatural or incomplete. Also, all of Act 2 and 3 are about the size of Act 1, but with more annoying walls, mountains in the way. I don't feel that way about Act 2. I 110% feel that way about Act 3. It's way harder to get around in that area than it should be. Guilds, there's the promise of an alchemist guild and geography guild in Act 1. The geography guild posts things around the map in Acts 2 and 3, but that's about it. Haven't found anything related to the alchemist guild. There's a whole alchemist guild quest line. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish it. It was the quest line that got broken for me in Act 3, so I haven't seen the end. I don't know if it's like great overall, but it's absolutely there. And I believe at this point it is fixed, so you should be able to go through the entire thing. A lot of the systems are incredible. They're really well done, but I just can't excuse the lack of effort put into half of this game and the promise that Act 1 wouldn't be half of the game. If you're running out of development time, update the early interactions so you aren't lying to your players about what to expect down the road. So I do on some level agree with that. If you know you're removing Camelot from the game, or Camelot was never going to be in the game, then those dialogues where NPCs say, hey, I'll see you menu in Camelot, those should come out because it gives the player the impression that, hey, ultimately we're going to end up at the castle, and that never actually happens. All right, last review we'll do for this video. This game does many things okay, but has a ton of gameplay and performance issues. I think everyone has been raving about this game because we as gamers haven't been given a lot of good games in recent years, so our expectations are lowered somewhat. Tainted Grail does have good qualities and elements to it. Big explorable areas, a lot of builds and varieties that can break the system very quickly, and tons of content. However, it seems that thanks to early access, most of the refinement was put into Act 1. The first map, and so people who have played it expected it to be this polished elsewhere. It is not. Once you are out of Act 1, you will notice the decline in voice acting, sound, and audio desync and muffling, many bug quest lines, and heavy performance issues, even on top rigs. So I've already mentioned that I didn't experience the same voice acting issues people have talked about. I also didn't experience many bugged quest lines. For me, I think it was about 3, maybe 4. And most of them were like small fetch quests, like, hey, there's this vendor, he wants 3 hides and for me to bring him back, but the monster never drops the hide, so I can't submit it in. The only major quest I was unable to complete where I was like, damn, this kind of sucks, is the Alchemist Guild. I was unable to finish the Alchemist Guild quest line because that was broken for me. But for all the other quests, completed for me just fine. Here are my list of issues as someone who wanted this game to be good and met with a middling experience. Number 1, bad performance. Even on a 4090, somehow this game dares to get me only 50 FPS in many places. I've played this with the settings, and it's a shame that a game coming out in 2025 is the graphics of something from 2017. Graphics isn't everything, I get that, but when paired with how horrendous you will experience the FPS chops to 20 to 30 at certain points in the game, especially in one part in the prologue when you encounter a certain yellow hue statue and get significant FPS drops, it's inexcusable. I didn't experience massive FPS drops during my game, but I definitely experienced long autosave times because it's a Unity game. So the longer you get into the game, the longer it takes when those autosaves occur. It just completely bogs your system down. I wonder if that might have been part of what this player was experiencing and they thought it was just frames dropping. That's definitely an issue that I hope they can clear up and make much better for the experience people have in Act 3. But as far as like FPS drops all over everywhere, I didn't see that. Let me know if you did down in the comments. Number 2, some abilities are useless and lack tooltips to explain to you what it actually does. It seems as though they plopped whatever they thought would be good gameplay without testing it. Some abilities grant extra damage after you have killed something, and you would think that that would be a good effect. But if you really think about it, why would I want to have an effect that only triggers some of the time? Most of the encounters you will face in the game don't have multiple enemies close to each other, so you will most likely never trigger it in the time frame you get that buff, especially during a boss fight. The lack of a detailed tooltip really applies to when getting loot and equipment, and you see there's some niche effect on it, and press Q to see more, and it only tells you what stats you need to gain the effect. It doesn't tell you specifically what the effect does. For instance, Mana Shield is something only explained in one specific ability in Spirituality. It is not explained in any of the gear that has it. So he mentions multiple things. The last one I agree with. In fact, I went through a lot of the game not even being clear on what Mana Shield was. And even with having that understanding of what it is, I feel like there needs to be a better job done of showing the player that Mana Shield is actually working during combat, like something on the bar that lets you know, okay, this is the Mana Shield section. You just got hit with damage. Mana Shield is now covering some of that, and that's what's occurring. Because as is, it's really hard to understand what's actually, how Mana Shield is interacting with your other abilities. To go back to why would you want want to have an ability that only triggers when you kill an enemy and enemies aren't packed together closely enough for that kind of stuff to matter, that's crazy talk. I don't know where that comes from. There are a ton of fights where you're going to have to face 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like even 8 enemies all at the same time, and being able to chop down the weakest one and automatically trigger a crazy effect on yourself or multiple crazy effects that then assist you with eliminating the other 6 or 7 enemies is fantastic. And while most of the major bosses are by themselves, so they're not going to have easy ways for you to trigger this, a lot of bounties, which are throughout every single act, those bounties are going to be surrounded by people. So you'll absolutely be able to trigger them and help you clear out some of the really, really tough bounties you encounter throughout the game. So I totally disagree about that perspective. And then the final note is about bad narrative flow and story. This is probably due to the indie team not having enough crunch time or writers, because the flow of things gets wrecked once you get into Act 2, but it starts at the end of Act 1. One of the mechanics of the game when you rest at a bonfire is you get to talk to one of your companions who you get stuck with once you achieve certain plot milestones, and you experience this a lot in Act 1. That would be King Arthur. It's pretty obvious through all the trailers and whatnot. He gets stuck inside your head, and sometimes you'll experience things in the game that'll trigger memories for him called whispers, and you can sit at the bonfire and talk to him about those, get his perspective. Once you get into Act 2, this stops immediately. I agree. I would say again, this is due to crunch time, but they're an indie game. They get to decide what to push this game out, and the lack of polish is really noticeable in Act 2 and 3. From my understanding, the devs talked about this issue and said it's due to a bug where the whispers in Act 2 were not working properly. And I think there was a launch day patch that was supposed to address this. But the fact that this person is bringing up the issue makes me feel like there are some players who all throughout Act 2, like me, were not experiencing whispers and were not able to have conversations with King Arthur. If that was you, let me know down in the comments if that's still an issue. Perhaps someone is pushing them to release this game out earlier than the devs really wanted to, so it might be best for you to wait on this game until they release a few patches to iron this out. The audio cues on many of the characters are super low, even on max volume, which then hurts your ears when you meet certain characters whom have exceedingly loud voices. Again, I didn't experience those type of audio issues, so I can't really comment on this, but hopefully that's not the experience you all are having now with the game. And that's it. That's my video walking through some of the reviews on Steam that obviously didn't have the greatest time with Tainted Grail. Some of them make some good points, but I feel like a lot of it is stuff that's not really legitimate, at least not to the experience that I had with the game. And hopefully this has given you some additional information you can use to decide whether or not Tainted Grail is a game that you want to experience. As always, let me know your thoughts down below. I would love to hear your feedback. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that bell. We're sure to have plenty more Tainted Grail content coming. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.